We have since found personal documents bearing the names of 3 of those 4 men close to the seats of 3 of the explosions.
But if the men blew themselves up, how did these documents survive?
When the body blows up, now everything is destroyed. The body is turned into pieces. How come these whole documents must remain intact? Now this is something that I cannot understand.
For Dr. Nassim, it's too similar to a suspicious find after the 9/11 attacks, in the wreckage of the Twin Towers.
If you go back to 9/11, the aeroplane and that blew up, everything, the metal melted, but the passport was found intact.
Although the hijacker perished, along with everybody else on board, his passport survived. A few days after 7/7, a driver's license in the name of the bomber was found in the wreckage of the bus.
The one who boarded the bus blew up, but his all identification papers were lying safe. Now it seems to me is one organization is writing all these stories because they're very similar.
There is an explanation for the mystery. According to court testimony, forensics suggest it's likely the driver's license wasn't on the bomber's body when the bomb went off. Like other documents recovered from the wreckage naming the bombers, the license was relatively undamaged. The pattern suggests the bombers dropped them nearby to ensure they would be identified. There are others who doubt the official account. Bristol, one Saturday in July last year. Around 60 people have come to a meeting arranged by the local branch of Britain's self-styled truth movement.
What we really need is an army of citizen bloodhounds that will not just accept the initial story. And I think that's...
For many here, suspicion 7/7 could have been an inside job has been fueled by doubts about the 9/11 attacks.
We have condemned 4 guys who admittedly are presumably dead without evidence being tested in a court of law, and that is a breach of the principle of innocent until proven guilty, and it's outrageous.
And I think it's very important that we question whether what is supposed to have happened really did happen, because it's been used as an excuse to erode the civil liberties of everybody.
Do you think it's possible that the 4 men didn't do it?
I think it's possible, yes.
From an underground office nearby, Tony Gosling runs an internet forum popular with 7/7 skeptics. A journalist who once worked for the BBC, Tony has been looking into the attacks for 4 years.
You have to go into these things with an open mind. I think it's really important that all journalists investigating these things do question the official story that's immediately rolled out.
Tony's research is raising the unthinkable.
It's possible that 7/7 is being used in order to persuade the British people to get behind the war on terror. And it's also, I think, entirely possible that these 4 guys are totally innocent.
A number of people now question whether these 4 men really carried out the attacks on 7/7. But is there any real evidence to back up their belief? 6 hours after the attacks on 7/7, the Metropolitan Police gave a news conference here in London. Brian Paddock, then a senior Metropolitan Police officer, ran it. Still, none of the bombers had been formally identified.
The auditorium was filled with journalists, and they all had many questions, most of which we didn't know the answers to.
Above all, who was responsible?
As far as I'm concerned, Islamic and terrorism are 2 words that do not go together. However, we are treating this as a terrorist incident. We are keeping an open mind as to who the perpetrators might be.
I was always very mindful of the fact that we didn't know for sure And I didn't think it would help in terms of community relations, for example, to speculate about so-called misnamed Islamic terrorism.
8 hours after the bombs went off, the Prime Minister addressed the nation.
This has been a most terrible and tragic atrocity. We know that these people act in the name of Islam.
On the basis of the evidence that I was given, Tony Blair's statement went beyond the facts. At a stage where you've got the police saying we're not sure who's done it, and a politician saying we think that these people are acting in the name of Islam, it's not going to go down very well with the Muslim community. They are clearly going to think that they are being prejudged, that they're being accused, even in the absence of at that stage, any evidence.
To 7/7 ripple effect, Tony Blair's statement is evidence he was part of a conspiracy to blame Muslims for the attacks.
Tony Blair said on the day of the explosions that we know this was done in the name of Islam, when there was no proof whatsoever of who had done it, therefore indicating he possibly had foreknowledge of the plan and who they intended to blame and the reason why they were going to blame the Muslims.
We know that these people act in the name of Islam.
But was Tony Blair's instant certainty evidence of a huge conspiracy, or was there another explanation? The government has always rejected calls for an independent inquiry into the bombings. Instead, it promised a full account.
We will bring together all the evidence that we have, and we will publish it so that people, the victims and others, can see exactly what has happened.
Nearly a year after the attacks, the government published their official report.
The official account of the bombings in London on 7th of July last year.
Its narrative was meant to be the definitive account.
The four then travelled from Luton to King's Cross, leaving at 7:40 a.m. and arriving at King's Cross at 8:23 a.m.
The official account is based on the 4 bombers catching that train. But months before it was published, this man had already uncovered a fact that would force a revision in the official narrative. Nick Collerstrom began his investigation at Luton Station.
6 weeks after the event, we found out this remarkable fact, which had not been anticipated by those who planned this crime, that all the trains that morning were severely delayed due to overhead power troubles in the Mill Hill area.
Immediately after the attacks, it was reported that police had established the 4 bombers had caught the 7:40 train from Luton to London King's Cross. Nick Collerstrom was not convinced. He decided to take a closer look at what time each delayed train had actually left Luton that day. He made an amazing discovery.
What did you find? Well, the simple fact was 7:40 had not run that day, which the whole government case had been predicated upon them getting the 7:40 train. That is how the perfect crime unravelled.
The official report said the 4 men had taken a train that was actually cancelled. The government now say that the 4 bombers actually got on an earlier train, but crucially, they arrived in time to carry out the attacks. The Home Secretary had to explain why the official account was wrong.
The police have now told us that that is incorrect. The train, in fact, left Luton Station at 7:25 a.m. Now, although this does not appear to affect anything else in the official account, it is nevertheless an error, and that is why I report it to the House.
An innocent mistake by the government, or evidence of a conspiracy?
It wasn't just a train they got wrong. It was a whole fabricated story of evidence that did not exist, could not have existed.
The ghost trains.
The 7:40 was cancelled that day.
Nick Collerstrom's discovery travelled far and wide on the internet.
Cancelled, and we then interviewed people readers on the platform.
And the official account had to be revised.
By sloppy drafting, unclear sourcing of information.
Nick Collerstrom also questions the authenticity of the CCTV image of the 4 men entering Luton Station. Suspicions focus on the figure in the white baseball cap and the way the railing appears in front of his face and body, rather than behind him.
The fabrication is most evident when you look at the figure of